Sounds too good to be true. You close down the old company with all its debt and the business carries on in a new company. I know exactly what you're thinking here. Surely that can't be legal. Surely you can't just dump the debt and carry on as if nothing happened. But if your company is going under and it's insolvent with no hope of recovery, but underneath you've got a business that's worth something, worth saving, there's a process that can let you keep that business alive while you close the debt-laden company down in an orderly fashion. It's called a pre-pack administration. And it might be the most misunderstood tool in the whole of insolvency. Now, I'm going to show you exactly where the line is between a pre-pack that's legitimate and one that's not. And there's one thing that a pre-pack doesn't do, one thing that it doesn't wipe out, that catches directors out all the time who walk into pre-packs thinking that it's a clean escape. If you believe it erases everything, you could be in for a nasty shock a few months down the line. Now, by the end of the video, you're going to understand exactly what a pre-pack administration is, when it's the right move and when it's a trap, and how it actually protects you and how you do it properly. So, what is a pre-pack administration? Well, let me explain it in very plain English. The name makes it sound more complicated than it is. A pre-pack administration, or pre-pack admin as I'm going to call it now, is where the sale of your company's business and assets is agreed in advance before the insolvent company formally enters administration. And you go into administration and immediately the administrator gets appointed and they sell the business back to the new company. And that's where the pre-pack admin comes from. The deal is basically lined up beforehand and executed as soon as you go into admin. And here's the bit that confuses people, right? The old company shuts down, it's in administration, but the business carries on. The insolvent company, the one that's weighed down by the debt, it goes into the administration and it's wound down. But the trading business inside it can be equipment, stock, brand, contract, staff, customers. It's sold to the new company. And quite often that new company is run by the same directors. So why do you do it like this instead of just letting the insolvent company collapse? Well, a business is worth a lot more if you keep it alive. If a company goes under in a messy way, customers will lose confidence, staff will leave, contracts get pulled, and the value drains away. A pre-pack moves the business across in one clean step before that damage happens. And crucially, and this is what most people will miss, if you do it right, a pre-pack admin, it can mean creditors get more money back because they're being paid from the sale of a functioning business, not the scraps left behind after everything falls apart. And the takeaway at this point is simple. Pre-pack administration is not a trick, it's a rescue tool. It's designed to take a viable business that's trapped inside an insolvent company and transfer it quickly and at a fair price into a new company. So the business survives, the people save their jobs, and creditors will usually get a better result than they would have done from the slow collapse of the insolvent company. Now, I probably made that sound like a happy ending, and done properly, it's normally a better result for absolutely everyone involved. But a pre-pack is not the right answer for every struggling business. And getting the next part wrong is how directors turn a rescue into a disaster. Because you'll speak to some insolvency people and like this is the tool that they'll use for absolutely everyone. But a pre-pack can be a trap. It's a brilliant process in one situation, and in another situation it can spell the end. You've got to know which one that you're in. It's the right move when you've got a genuinely viable business trapped inside an insolvent company. So the work's there, customers are paying, the business would make money if it wasn't dragging a mountain of old debt that it can't realistically clear. And in that situation, a pre-pack cuts the business free from the dead weight and lets it breathe. And that's what it's designed to do. But the trap that I see a lot is, listen, a pre-pack can't fix a business that don't work. If your business model has failed, if your business is losing money even before you factor in cutting the historic debt, if your pricing's wrong, if your costs are out of control, or your margins have eroded to nothing, a pre-pack will simply move a failing business from one company into another, and you'll be doing the same thing again in 9 to 12 months. Except now you've created a pattern. One company built up debt and collapsed, and the new one's heading the same way. And that pattern has a name, it's called Phoenixism. And HMRC and the Insolvency Service, they are all over this right now, and they're watching really closely. And if they believe that you've used a pre-pack to just dump particularly tax debts and carry on as normal, they've got now powers that will lead to personal liability for old company tax debts and new company tax debts, and you can be disqualified. So a pre-pack used to rescue a viable business, it can be sensible, perfectly legitimate. But a pre-pack used to dodge tax debt on a business that was never going to survive, it is now a fast track to personal consequences. I'll give you a real example. So there was a director I spoke to, he was convinced that he needed to pre-pack, okay? But when we sort of got into it, and that's what I want to do with people, it's like, right, okay, you've got all these insolvency options, but what has actually gone wrong in this business? The business was losing money hand over fist on almost every job, debt or no debt, A pre-pack wouldn't rescue this business. The model had changed, the market would have changed, and it would have rebuilt a company that was destined to fail. And obviously it would have put him under more scrutiny. And I had to steer this guy, and it was hard. And I said, listen, a pre-pack isn't going to solve this. Like this model you're operating in doesn't work. And what we had to do is we had to put the business into liquidation, and nothing come out the other side. And there's a kind of test. Like, look at your business, strip away the old debt and ask yourself, does this business make money? What changes can I make to this business to get it back to profitability in a new company? And if you can strip away the debt and still make money, a pre-pack genuinely could save the business, potentially. But if not, pre-pack doesn't rescue you, repeats the problem, and it's going to put you in the firing line. Now, if you've got a viable business that's worth saving, the next thing to understand is what happens the moment administration starts, because something powerful kicks in that will stop creditor pressure in its tracks. Now, when a business is in trouble, it's not always just the debt that's killing it. It is the constant pressure. You will be feeling that. The constant attack from creditors. So you might have people ringing you every single day, letters coming in, CCJs, HMRC threatening you, and that fear, I'm going to get a winding up petition landing on my desk any day. Now, it's very hard to fix things when you're being pulled apart and constantly under pressure. And this is what administration does that's like genuinely powerful, because the minute that you file, it's a document at court and the company ends into administration. It's done really quickly. You get a legal protection called a moratorium. It kicks in. And in plain English, a moratorium's a freeze. It's like a legal shield. And while it's in place, creditors can't start or continue action against the company. So a petition can't be issued when you're in administration. People can't enforce payments off you in the usual ways. And again, the most crucial thing for a lot of years is HMRC won't push ahead with a winding up petition, certainly without the court's permission. So all the pressure, all the enforcement, all the panic, it gets forced to stop. And that's by law. And then there's some breathing space. And that's what can make a rescue possible. The idea is it creates like a protected window where the business can be transferred cleanly into a new company without someone jumping in midway and wrecking the old deal. Listen, I've spoke to countless directors who go through this, but the most recent one, he had a winding up petition looming. We believed that it were days away. And what that would have done is it could have frustrated the whole rescue process, and it could have ended any chance of saving this business. And by entering administration, it triggered the moratorium and it stopped it in its tracks. And that gave us the room we needed to move the viable parts of the business across safely to a new company. And again, for a fair market value. The takeaway is this: one of the biggest things a pre-pack gives you is protection. The moratorium will freeze creditor action from the moment administration begins. So no petitions, no enforcement, gives you a bit of breathing space. And this can turn a chaotic collapse into a controlled rescue. Okay. Now, here's the part I promised you at the start, where most people's suspicion lives. And again, this is the line. Remember I said there's a line that sits between a pre-pack that's above board and one that's dodgy and gets a director into trouble. And it really comes down to one thing. It's valuation. Valuation and safeguards around the whole process. Now, the suspicion people here, have all the time, and I completely understand this. People who will hear, close the company, keep the business. Your gut reaction is it sounds like a stitch-up. It sounds dodgy. Like the directors walks away from the debt. They carry on as normal. There's no problems. It's too good to be true. It's dodgy directors. I really understand that feeling. Listen, remember, I'm talking to you here. I've been through my own insolvency. And one of the heaviest things I had to carry was the fear of what people would think of me. It was awful. I thought everyone were talking me. Thought I'd let people down. The shame sat on me for a while. And a lot of directors who are considering pre-packs, they feel the same thing. If I do this, people will think I'm one of the bad ones. Listen, by the way, if anything I've said to you so far has made you think, I want to talk to this guy or one of his team, you go to the description. At the top of the description, there's a link. Give me your details. One of my team will call you today and we'll walk you through if a pre-pack's suitable for you. And if you don't want to speak to somebody, listen, I get that, right? The link underneath, the second link in the description, if you give me your email address, I'll give you a free guide to insolvency. And I want your email address just so I can stay in touch with you, okay? But back to what I was talking about. If you do this properly, a pre-pack isn't a loophole. It is one of the most scrutinised processes in insolvency. And the safeguards that have been brought in are the things that make this fair. And the legal line is really this: it comes down to value. The company's assets and business have to be independently valued, not by you, not by me, not by your mate, not by someone who's got a stake in the outcome. It needs to be a proper, qualified, independent valuer. And the business has to be sold for a fair price. And basically the money that is paid for the business goes into the insolvency estate, and the idea is for it to benefit creditors. Yes, a lot of creditors won't get paid. A lot will get paid less than what they're owed. But you can't just pick your business up for nothing, buy it back cheap. It's this rule that keeps the whole thing honest. Now, because in a pre-pack, the buyer is often a connected party, meaning you or someone close to the company, there's extra safeguards on top. And what it will mean is an additional independent check. So you not only get an agent to value it, there is a marketing process. And in that marketing period, people can come in and make an offer for your business, but then an independent written report from an evaluator who reviews the whole deal. And they also have to sign off on it and say whether it's reasonable or not. It's basically a second set of eyes specifically there to stop connected party sales being done quietly and knock down prices, okay? So you've got to get this bit right. Independent valuation, fair price, proper connected party safeguards, and the pre-pack is legitimate. It's been regulated, it's been overseen by agent, insolvency practitioner, and evaluator. And often that is the best outcome for everyone, actually including your creditors. And this is how you do it wrong, right? You skip the valuation bit. You basically sell some vans for a lot less than they're worth. You try and rush it through. You try and do this all yourself without appointing you, and then you appoint your insolvency practitioner. This is dangerous territory, okay? Insolvency practitioners are trained to look at where the assets have gone. And deals can be challenged. If you're like nicking assets out the back door for a lot less than they're worth, that insolvency practitioner, once they get appointed, can spot it, follow the assets, make you liable for any shortfall. So let's say, for example, let's say you've got 10 vans worth 15 grand each, okay? They're worth 150 grand. And you sell them to a connected party for 30 grand and you get some, made up valuation. But once the insolvency practitioner gets appointed, they will check that and clearly see it's called a transaction under value. And they can reverse the transaction, or they can make you personally liable for the shortfall, and you can get disqualified as well. So the takeaway on this is the line between a proper pre-pack and one that's done dodgily, it's the valuation and the safeguards around it. It's not red tape, it's the thing that protects you and proves you did this properly. So it stops you being criticised down the line. And again, let me show you exactly what survives on the good side of a pre-pack. Because obviously, beyond saving the business, there's the human side that matters. People, contracts. When a director's staring down insolvency, it's usually not just the debts that's keeping them awake at night. It's like, what's going to happen to my staff? What happens to me customers, my contracts? Does this debt follow me everywhere? And a pre-pack answers all three. And the answers are often better than most directors expect. I like to give examples. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah had a commercial cleaning company, 22 staff, long-standing contracts with offices and schools. And it was really COVID that killed her because no one went to work and people didn't go to school. But she built this reputation over years and years. Again, she never recovered from COVID, and then a big client went bust, owing her a lot of money. And it basically dragged the company into insolvency. Now, this limited company here, as it stood, were finished. But in and amongst this business, there was contracts, there was staff who were solid. And if she sheds the legacy debt that she built up over COVID, the business were profitable. And the pre-pack was the process that we went through. What happened to her staff? They all transferred across with the business. There's a set of rules called 2P, which means when a business is sold as a going concern, employees usually move with it and they keep their existing rights and terms. So Sarah's 22 people didn't lose their livelihoods. A lot of them never realised how close it come to losing the jobs, but they all moved over. What happened to her contracts and the customers? Well, in large, they just carried on because the customers were happy with the work that she was doing. And she went over to the customers and basically told them, I'm having to restructure the business. And the clients didn't panic. Service didn't stop. The schools and offices that she'd worked with for years still needed cleaning, and they were happy with the work that they'd done. So the relationship stayed intact, and she bought those contracts as part of the pre-pack. So what happened to the old debt? Well, the old debt stayed with the old company, or most of it did. There was a C-bills, there was HMRC debt. Now, the insolvent company went through administration, and a lot of those debts died. There was 1 or 2 PGs that followed her into the new company, and she was able to restructure them over a period of time. And the money that she paid for the business came into the pot, and there was a dividend paid out to creditors. So that new company didn't inherit the old unsecured debts. It started clean, but it paid a fair price for the business that it bought. And today Sarah's trading, and she's trading really well. Jobs have been saved, contracts are intact, and there's a clean company underneath it all. And the old debt was dealt with through a proper process. And the takeaway is this: a properly done pre-pack doesn't just save a business. In theory, it can protect jobs through 2P, it can preserve contracts by moving fast, and it leaves the historic unsecured debts in the old company while the new one starts afresh. For the right business, that isn't just survival, it's people keeping the jobs who would have otherwise lost them. Now, I do need to balance all this out, because there's one thing a pre-pack doesn't do. And if you go into it believing that it wipes the slate completely clean, this is the part that always comes back to bite you. Now, for every reason that a pre-pack can do well, there is one dangerous belief that goes with it, and it erases everything really. You close the old company down, start a new one, and all the problems vanish. That is not true. And the things it doesn't touch are usually personal. And number one, it's not going to get rid of your PGs. If you've signed a personal guarantee on the old company's borrowing, a bank, a lease, an invoice finance facility, a supplier, a credit card, a pre-pack doesn't cancel that. If the old company can't pay, the lender will follow the guarantee and that'll come to you personally. Moving the business into a new company won't make your signature disappear on that PG. And number two, overdrawn directors' loan accounts. If you took money out of the old company that was recorded as director's loan and it's overdrawn, the balance is still owed back to the old company, and the administrator dealing with the old company has got a duty to try and recover it from you personally. A pre-pack can save the business, but it doesn't wipe out what you owe back to the company, okay? So again, a pre-pack is not a way to escape personal liabilities, and if someone sells it to you like that, they either don't understand it or they're not being straight with you. Now, the key point for me here, it's not the end of the world. Both of these issues are manageable, but you've got to deal with them early and realistically. A PG almost certainly can be repaid over a longer period of time. Or, you know, so let's say your funding circle, for instance. Funding circle will allow you to restructure that debt over a longer period of time, okay? And sometimes, let's say your new business, it can be tight on cash flow at the start, so they might let you go on reduced payments for 3 to 6 months and then step those payments up. Or you can offer these lenders full and finals. Depends on your situation. You know, best one I've heard recently, iWalker were owed 150 grand or 140 grand, I think, and the director borrowed 50 grand off his father-in-law and paid it off. So he got 100 grand written off. Now, an overdrawn director's loan account as well, that 99% of times can be negotiated too, okay? Now, remember, the overdrawn loan account, where will you find it? Well, ideally on a trial balance, QuickBooks, Sage, Free Agent, whatever you use, pull off a trial balance and it'll show your director's loan account in assets or debtors. That's assuming that you use this software and you keep it up to date. If you don't, you're probably going to have to go back to your last set of accounts, and again, it'll be in the assets section or the debtors section, or maybe director's current account section. Now, everything you've taken out of the business that isn't payroll since those last set of accounts potentially could end up on your director's loan account depending on when you become insolvent. The mistake people make is they think they're taking dividends, but you can't take a dividend out of a company that's not profitable. But anyway, we can help you understand that, but what we've got to do is when you're negotiating these director's loan accounts with the insolvency practitioner, you've basically got to offer them more than they would get if they push you into bankruptcy. Now, again, I'm not there to scare you, but if you can give them a better realisation than they would get by making you bankrupt, there's a good chance that they'll accept it. Now, remember, bankruptcy is super expensive. You know, there can be 50, 60, 70 grand's worth of costs of making someone bankrupt, especially if you've got a big house with lots of equity in. And it takes a long time to physically force someone out of a house. Could be 3 or 4 years before a creditor gets any money back. So the old saying is, you know, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bus. And timing really matters on this. You've got to get proper advice early and lay out the full picture with the administrator. And an administrator, although they can't commit to a settlement formally until they've been appointed and done all the relevant investigation work, what we'll do, listen, we've done this a long time, right? We've helped thousands of directors, which you can go and see on Trustpilot, by the way. But we will give you a good idea. As long as you tell us everything, we will give you a good indication of what a settlement could look like. And the takeaway is this, right? A pre-pack can save the business, but it is not going to erase PGs or directors' loan accounts. Those are going to survive the process, right? But again, in both cases, you can get deals done. Now, hope you found the video useful, right? If you want to speak to someone today, give us a call. Chris Worden, Director First. And if you want to find out more about how a pre-pack works, remember that's buying the assets, buying the process, and you want to watch another video on a pre-pack, it might explain it in a different way, go and have a look at that video over there. Okay? Thanks for your time, Chris Worden.